Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Neat and Tangled. Today I am going to be using the Dream Big stamps and dies. Very quickly before we move on to the rest of what's happening with the card, these stamps and dies are actually in the clearance section. You can get both of them for a total of $12. You can get the stamp set for less than $5. So just FYI in case you love it, because once they're gone, they're gone. So I was thinking about how I wanted to approach this. And you guys know I love scenes, so I thought it would be fun to kind of do the same card with a day scene and a night scene. And in order to do that, I am using watercolor. So these are my Daniel Smith watercolors, and I keep them there. This is actually an alcohol ink tin, case, but I super love it for my watercolors. Like I just squeeze out a little bit of the tube and it works well for me. I have a larger piece, I'm not even sure what size this is, a larger piece of watercolor cardstock than I need, just in case it doesn't come out the way I want to, and I can kind of pick and choose what area I want to be my card background. I'm using just dropping in a couple of drops of water into the colors that I know I'm going to be using, and then I did wet the entire cardstock with a wide brush. I have the 1-inch flat brush. So this is a wet on wet technique, which means the paper's wet, the paint is wet. And then I am just going to start dropping in, I started with some watered down blue. Watercolors always dry lighter than the way that they look when they're wet. So it was just a little too light. So I started kind of pulling directly from my blue, which I think mine is cobalt, but you can use whatever you have on hand. This technique will also work with any other mediums that work with water. So if you want to do distress inks or distress oxides, oxides will obviously have a chalkier finish. If you have like Tombow markers, if you want to scribble them out on a craft mat and watercolor with those, like whatever you normally watercolor with, you can do this with. So I decided to leave lots of clouds in my daytime scene because I just think it makes the background more interesting. But I'm dropping the color in and then pretty much just leaving it in that area. I'm not trying to spread the color as far as like card wide or anything. I'm dropping it into the area that I want, and then I'm leaving it along the water, spread it however it spreads. I am continuing to add more pigment so that I can build up the intensity of color that I want. But you'll see there's lots of white areas in here. Now I started to feel like I was getting a weird pattern going on. So I did, drop in a little bit of color here or there along the white spots to act, I guess, to give my clouds a little bit more dimension. And then I'm just going to continually build this up. Now this video is, you guys know my videos are long anyway, this video is a little bit longer. I didn't speed up any of the watercolor because this is the purpose of the video, is to teach you guys how to do the backgrounds. And then, the coloring and things like that will also be included, but they're not necessarily the focus. I did decide to add in a little bit of purple into my blue. Again, just color variation makes things a little bit more dynamic. So I'm gonna let that kind of do its thing. There is a little bit of dry time in between. I don't want the paper to be completely wet, but I don't want it to be dry either. I still want my color to move. And then here I'm using a very, very watered down lunar black to create some shadows in my clouds, and again, just create more of that dimension. So I typically tend to put them at the bottom of my clouds, and then I might put in like the cloud on the right. I did put some like in the center, so to give it a more fluffy appearance. But there isn't necessarily like a right or a wrong way to do your clouds. It's just the way that I approach mine. You just want to make sure that you are leaving white area. Clouds are white. You have to leave that negative space. As far as making it a scene, up here I really didn't like the way this part was looking, and that actually ended up being the part that I cut off. I just didn't really love it. But I wanted, like I said, I wanted it to be a scene. So it's not just the clouds, though if that's the card that you're making, you could totally do the background in all clouds. But I wanted there to be a little bit of greenery at the bottom, as if this cute little fairy and her fun little goose were flying over, maybe some treed areas or some forest. So I put down more, clean water to make sure that my color was going to spread. And then this is sap green. Again, very watered down version to start. And then I also added in, I think it's turquoise. It's a teal color. It's in the teal family. But again, just for the color variation. And then once I let that dry a little, again, paper is still wet, just not completely, like just not soaking. And then going back and adding in some darker color, just kind of tapping that in. I wanted it to be a very loose, you know, as if it was off in the distance and they were flying over it. So I'm certainly not trying to put in any real kind of detail. I did add in, just to kind of break up the green a little bit, I did add in a little bit of brown, just very, very little, just to kind of break that up. And there obviously would be some brown in, you know, forest trees, things like that. It kind of got a little, I kind of got a little crazy adding the brown. So then I did go back over in some spots and add green again. But you can kind of toy with this as much as you want. Again, not pushing the pigment around, not moving it around, really just tapping it in and then leaving it alone. So I'm going to set this aside to dry while we work on the night scene, which is more of like a galaxy background. This one is the same, it's a wet on wet technique. So you're going to wet the, you know, the whole paper. I did get a little crazy. I forgot I wanted to put the trees in because I was so excited about the galaxy background. But so this one involves a little bit of underpainting, so like a base layer. And for that, I chose blues, purples, and pinks because I knew I was going to color my little fairy outfit in purple. But you could use any colors that you want underneath this. So if you want a more blue, green, yellow, space sky, put those colors down. If you want a more purple, orange, pink space sky, put those colors down. So I'm just going to coat everything, the entire paper. And again, keeping in mind that watercolors do lose their intensity as they dry. I'm going to be doing 2 coats of these colors. So everything is covered, and then I'm going to go back in and just continue to add color to increase that intensity until I am happy with it. You know, these techniques are super simple to do. As long as you maintain that self-control of not playing with it. That is by far and away the hardest part, is to continue to manipulate the paint once you put it down, because it looks like a big old hot mess, and it does. I don't deny that. So our initial instinct is to fix it or make it better, but you don't want to do that. Just watercolors, just leave them alone. So now that I have my base layer down, I am going to heat set this until it's completely dry. It's not going to be wet at all. And then you can see even dry, it looks better than it did wet. And then I'm going to take Lunar Black and I am going to paint right over top of this. And in your head, you're probably thinking, Kelly, this looks hideous. Your 7-year-old could do a better job, and you would be right. This does not look great right now. Hang tight, because it's got to get ugly before it gets pretty. So I'm just going over this. I am leaving some spots open where like the color behind the underpainting is going to show through. And then there are some areas where I am making the black more intense, where I am leaving the black, you know, just a little bit lighter. But because watercolors are transparent, you're still going to be able to see those colors behind it. Now, I only did 1 layer, meaning I worked on 1 wet layer of black the entire time. In hindsight, I kind of wish I would have dried it down and then put more black on top. I feel like I would have been happier with the intensity at the end of the day. Again, it still looks like a galaxy background, night sky kind of situation. But I kind of wish that I would have dried it down just so more areas were a little bit more solid or opaque. With the K sound, everybody always is like, you're saying it wrong. It's not with a G. I'm saying it with a K. I don't know why it sounds like a G. Anyway, so here it just kind of looks like a big old hot mess. Totally understandable. But the magic is in the details. So one of the first things that I like to do is, because I like the texture that it gives, I will spray mine lightly with a spray bottle. I also like to do some spatters. Now you could do varying colors. I just stuck with black for this. And then the magic really happens when you start to bring in the white. Now, I used acrylic paint because that's what I had on hand. But in the watercolor world, the equivalent of this would be gouache, would be white gouache, which is just a more opaque, I know, anyway, we're going to move on from the word. So it's just basically a more solid color type medium that you can use. And then with a stiff bristled brush, now I have this one from years ago. It came in a super cheapy set that I purchased when I was buying Peanuts some like paint brushes, but it's very, very stiff and it works great for this. So I'm just going to start tapping in. This is watered down. I did add water to this. Just basically like some little galaxies or Milky Ways or things like that. And then you can start to see how it begins to look more space-like. Eventually I am going to switch over to full strength paint. But before I do that, with the watered down version, I'm going to use my finger. You can use an acrylic block, but you need something to push the paintbrush against so that it creates those little spatters that look like stars. So here we're starting to definitely get more of that night sky galaxy vibe, which I'm totally loving. And then once I dry it down, I am going to go back in with full strength white acrylic paint. These stars will be much brighter, and this is really going to pull the whole thing together. You could, in addition, I did not do it, but you could definitely use like a layer of perfect pearls for this to add some shimmer shine in the background, and it would look amazing. So here's where I realized I've forgotten my trees, that I've been so excited about my galaxy background that I forgot my trees. So I'm just going to go back in right over top with just some clean water, and then I'm going to blot that up. I didn't take a lot of time to remove the color because my trees are going to be dark. What I was really trying to remove was that white acrylic paint. So now I'm just going to go in right over top. I'm using the same colors, just less watered down. So I'm starting with the sap green, putting in my tree line, and then I am going to move to that like teal turquoise color, and then put that right on top. I am leaving a lighter edge because in night scenes, which we'll talk about more when we get to the coloring, in night scenes, there's a lot more things in shadow and a very small amount of highlight. So then from there, I mixed the teal with a little bit of black, and I'm going to put that layer down, and then I'm going to go straight black, just so that there's a couple of like tree layers built up. But again, it's nighttime, so you're not going to see a whole lot of detail. It's okay that they're blobby. It's giving the illusion of trees, which is really all you would see at night anyway. Okay, so then from there, we're going to move into, once I set this aside to dry, I'll show you both of them, and then we're going to move into the Copic coloring, which I am not going to explain in as nearly as much detail. We're going to more or less have story time. But if you watch my other videos or you're looking for specific instruction on Copic coloring, there's a ton of videos. So these are both of the backgrounds dry. I love the way that they came out, two totally different type scenes. I am going to trim these down and then do my coloring. Every stamp that I used is from this Dream Big set. So the sentiments, the clouds, the little fairy and her super cute goose, all that's from the same set. Okay, so I left you hanging last time with my hair. With my hair story. So with quarantine going on, social distancing, all that jazz, things are opening back up now. But with that going on, I was getting mad roots, just like everybody else. And while I don't have a ton of gray, I do have a couple of strands in there, but my hair has highlights and lowlights in it. And so my hair normally, like my regular color, is like a light brown. Or a medium brown, light medium brown. But I do get highlights added in, and I always have. Sorry. See, we have to go back to the card. So here, I'm going to show you these three clouds. The cloud on the right does not have any shading. The one in the middle will have just gray shading, and the one on the left I'm going to add some color to. And this was really just so you could see the difference in adding, like what adding the shadows looks like, and then what adding the color looks like. I always do the gray shading and then add color to my clouds just because I think they're more dynamic, but that way you could see what they look like and make a decision for yourself. Okay, so I have about 2.5 inch roots, and my hair was super blonde on the bottom, brown on top, and so when I would put my hair in a top knot, which has been like quarantine 2020 hairdo every day, my hair was like two completely different colors. So I wanted to kind of find a way to blend them together. And I had been seeing a ton about Overtone on Facebook and Instagram and ads, and other like YouTube people that I follow had been using it. And basically Overtone is just a highly pigmented conditioner. So it's like a demi permanent color. It's going to wash out if you don't keep applying it. They do have touch-up conditioners. I did not purchase that. I was not looking to keep my color. I was really only looking to just even out what I had going on until I could get back to my regular hairdresser. So I went on their website. They have a ton of fun colors, and one of the things that's unique about them is they have fun colors for people with dark hair. So they have like a pink for brown hair, a purple for brown hair, blue for brown hair, what else, you know what I'm saying. And so I cannot, and I don't necessarily know that I would. I think they're beautiful on other people, but I've never really had any strong desire to put unnatural colors in my hair, but I also can't for work. It's just something that's part of our dress code. If it's not a natural color, you're not allowed to have it. So they did come out with a basics line, which was like the lightest one. No, there's ginger, there is golden brown, there's chocolate brown, and then I think there's like an espresso and a black. But anyway, they're all, regular, everyday colors that, God creates in people's heads. So I decided to go with the golden brown because I wasn't looking to go super dark, and I was just looking to blend in the colors. So the Overtone comes, and they recommend that you do a swatch test. So Peanut and I did. Now, I told you in the previous video, like I'm well versed in dyeing my own hair. I did not have a brush to paint it on. So I actually used an old like craft paintbrush that was clean. It was like a 1.5 inch flat brush. So I figured, well, that'll work. And so I literally dyed all of my hair with a paintbrush, but nonetheless. So we did the little swatch test. I pulled one out from like the nape of my neck. It was probably like a 1 inch piece. We dyed it. It only sits on there for 15 minutes. Now, the longer you leave it on, the more color that is deposited, but I wasn't looking for any of that jazz. I was just looking to even out my color. So I did the 1 inch one. I then washed it out and blow dried it, and it appeared to be a color, a very good color, a color that I already had in my hair, due to the highlights, lowlights, all those things, switching that up for over the years. I had multiple colors in my hair, and it was probably, I would not describe it as a golden brown. It was probably more of a strawberry blonde, but the majority of that piece of hair, obviously, was blonde. So I was like, okay, cool. So then I started sectioning, and, putting on, it was super easy to work with. I was actually really surprised. My hair is longer than short. It's about, I don't know, 3 inches past my shoulders. It's not like super long, but not short either. And I used about a quarter of the container. And so I was really impressed with like the amount of time or the amount of product that I was able to use. Like obviously I could use that multiple times if I was so interested in doing so. And then I let it sit for my full, 15 minutes. While it was on, I was like, this is very orange. Peanut also commented that it was very orange. I was surprised at how orange it was, but like, when you bleach your hair blonde, it turns blue. So like the color that it is isn't necessarily always the color that it is. So I did get into the shower and washed it out. Rinsed it out. I did not shampoo it. Like week 1, day 1, applying it, I did not shampoo it. I just rinsed it. And it didn't stain my shower or anything. That part was really nice, considering how pigmented the conditioner was. The only thing I will tell you that I was a little surprised by was how slippery my shower floor got, because it is conditioner. So as it was all coming out, I was like, ooh, brace yourself, girl. You're going to go down like a sack of potatoes. But that was short-lived. As the, conditioner went down the drain, it was short-lived. But for like when it was rinsing, it was really kind of a little bit slippery. So then once I got out, and like it was dark, I was like, whoo, I don't know that I was ready for this. Okay, so it's dark. That's cool. But it's wet, so we'll see what color we get when we dry it. So then once I dried it, it was so red, y'all. It was so red. Golden brown, I would not. That's not accurate. It was definitely red. Definitely more on me. I was like, did I accidentally get the ginger one? Like, what happened? Um, but that, I mean, it was okay. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I hate it. So I guess there's that. Like, it was definitely a color I could live with. I did post pictures and stuff on Instagram, so if you follow me on there, then you probably saw them. But I have been um, like documenting or taking pictures like each time that I wash my hair to see how it fades out. And at this point, which it's been about, I think six washes, I am pretty much a strawberry blonde. Like that's basically where I'm sitting at right now. It definitely got lighter with each consecutive wash, and where my roots were, where my natural color was, it certainly faded from there first. But all in all, honestly, a really pleasant experience with Overtone. So I would recommend it as something that's super easy at home to use. And, you know, if you're, I don't know, like going to be on vacation from work, or you know you're looking for something that's just going to be or maybe you're a person who likes to change your hair colors like I like to change my nail polish, you know, that I would definitely recommend it. It was really a pleasant experience. So it is still in my hair. I have not reapplied it at all. We have to go back to the card. So with my nighttime scene, it needs to be colored as if it is in the night. The coloring would not look the same as it is during the day. So I kind of gave myself like a little, like a large star, small moon, however you want to put it, so that I would know where my light source was. That's what my arrow is. So that you can see, because it is not on the background, why I'm choosing to shade where I'm shading. And that's because if my light source is in this top right hand corner, so for her on her dress, her arm is going to block all of that light. Only the like left hand side of her chest, the top portion of her arms would be lit. And it's going to be the same thing for the goose. It's going to look a little bit crazy because we're putting down so much gray for a white goose. But the reality of the situation is most of that would be in shadow. The moon is on the opposite side of them. So there are areas where that will catch light, which is like the wings, or the layers of the wings, the outside edges of the chest and the top of the head. Those would all be catching light. Under the chin would not be, because the head would be blocking any of that light. And then on the front of her, well, not a goose, it's a her, on the neck, that would all be blocked. So for the most part, this is just going to be really filled in rather dark. I probably could have gone darker, and maybe that I would be happier with the result at the end of it. I'm not sure if it is the white line from the die cutting that's throwing off my whole vibe with it at the final card, or if I didn't go dark enough, which very well could be the case. Oftentimes when people complain about that they don't love their coloring, or their coloring isn't dimensional enough, it's typically because we haven't gone dark enough. So there's that. Now I'm going to add the shading to her face. Her face is upturned toward the light, but really the only portion of her face that's going to get a ton of light is that left-hand side. And her bangs are hanging over her forehead, so there will also be a shadow there. Her hand and her leg are behind the goose, so all of that's going to be blocked from the light. And then for her wings, they're transparent. So I didn't want to add a ton of shading to them. I just kind of wanted to tone them back a little bit, which I did with my C3 and my C1, still leaving that true blue color on the edges where it would, in fact, catch the light. For her hair, really only like the top of her head and where her bangs are swooping, where they'd be coming off from her face, would catch any kind of light. So this is some backlighting is what this is called, is really something that's super cool and can add a lot to a scene card. Like I said, this one I'm struggling with the completion of the card, and it may be because I didn't go dark enough with the goose, or it may be because I have the white outline from the die cutting. Really not sure. For the legs, of the goose, the crown, and the little beak, they're all kind of, the light's hitting them differently. So for the beak and the crown, obviously that highlight's going to be on the right hand side where it would be getting the majority of the light. For the legs, it's really only the feet, because the legs are tucked up underneath the goose's, that sounds funny, anyway, the body. So that's really why it's really only the feet that are going to catch any kind of light. I'm going to heat emboss my sentiments, just because I like labels anyway, like the label look anywho, but I thought that it would look super cool, especially with the galaxy background, and then it would help it kind of stand out on the very light day scene that we have going on. So yeah, so the overtone, I mean, it was red for real, y'all, but really easy to apply and really great results. Like, was very, very full coverage, you know, for the first couple of washes. So I ain't mad at it. It was a good process. Peanut, like I said, was like, Mom, it's orange, it's very orange, why are you so orange? But it didn't end up being orange. It was much warmer than I expected for a golden brown. Golden obviously indicates that it's warm, but my hair's more on the ash side anyway. I just was very taken aback by how much red was in it. Anywho, so for the clouds, I adhered both of those down flat. I popped up my little girl and her goose on foam tape. And then for this cloud, I am going to do a half and half. I didn't realize it until I started to adhere it, that I'd basically be adhering the same cloud on top of the same cloud. So I had to flip it over, so there would be some difference. And then I am going to use foam tape to also pop up my sentiment. I decided to add in some of the clear sequin mix to kind of tie the whole thing in, and fill up those gaps. So this one just has 3 because the sentiment is much shorter and it's easier to make that tight design. I did the day one the same way, everything's popped up on foam, but I did just want to make mention the reason the sequins are different is because the sentiment is different. The sentiment is much larger, and I needed to use more sequins to kind of tighten up that design and make everything look cohesive. Also, fun tip, if you have a sequin that maybe is a little bit larger than you would like, try tucking it behind something. It just adds a different level of interest. So this is both of them here completed, just adding some clear glitter over top of the fairy, and then the golden parts of my goose, and that's it. That's the whole card. So cards, plural. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that you will give one of these techniques a try, or at least you learn something bare minimum, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.